Hey there, everybody. Mr. Wilhelm here. Today I'm here to talk about physical and chemical changes in the digestive system. So far, we've already talked about matter and how matter can change both physically and chemically. We've talked about if matter changes physically, if it's a physical change, matter changes from one thing to another, but it still remains the same substance. It might change in size, it might change in shape, it could change state, but it still remains the same substance. Gave an example of tearing a piece of paper. If I take a piece of paper and tear it into two pieces of paper, I change the size, I change the shape, but it's still paper. We also talked about chemical changes, and if it's a chemical change, matter turns into something new. It changes from one substance to a completely new substance, and its properties also change. I gave the example of taking a piece of paper and burning that piece of paper. You turn that piece of paper into ash. Ash has completely different properties than paper. Paper is white, ash is black. Okay, now we're going to take that learning and apply it to the digestive system and how physical and chemical changes occur in the digestive system of the body. To begin with, digestion and nutrients. Digestion is the process where food is broken down by the digestive system into small nutrients to be absorbed by the body. Digestion is all about taking a large piece of food and breaking it down into small enough pieces and breaking it down into substances that the body can absorb and the cells can use. Every cell in the body needs energy. So the digestive system is given the responsibility of breaking down food so that the cells can absorb that food and that energy so they can continue to live. Nutrients are very tiny molecules that are broken down from large molecules to be absorbed and used by the body and cells. Nutrients are also little things that the cells need in order to function properly. There are two types of digestion. There is mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. Mechanical digestion is where there is a physical change in a piece of food. Physical change. You're breaking down a piece of food physically. So the food might be changing size, it might be changing shape, but it's still the same substance. For example, if I take a large apple, a whole apple, and I take a bite out of that piece of apple, and I crush that little piece of apple up in my mouth, that piece of crushed apple has a very different shape and form than the large apple as a whole. However, it's still apple. It's still the same substance. That's mechanical digestion. You could also call this physical digestion, as in a physical change, as long as you know that mechanical and physical can be used interchangeably. So mechanical digestion or physical digestion, breaking down food into smaller pieces, but it still remains the same food, the same substance. In chemical digestion, you're taking a piece of food and you're turning it into something new. Okay. For example, if you take it and you eat a cracker or a piece of bread, which is composed of carbohydrates, the enzymes in the saliva in your mouth will start to turn those carbohydrates, that bread, that starch, and turn it into sugar, like table sugar. It's changing it from bread into sugar. It's changing that substance and it's turning it into something completely new. So that is chemical digestion. So mechanical digestion equals physical change. Mechanical digestion actually starts in the mouth. Okay, when you chew, tear, grind, mash, mix, and crush up food, you use your teeth, you use your tongue to take these pieces of food and make them smaller. And you have to be able to swallow these pieces of food. They have to be able to go down into your stomach. The mouth is a very important part of the digestive system. It starts the whole digestive process. If you were to swallow a whole piece of food, let's say a grape, a whole grape, or a strawberry, or a large piece of food, or even a large piece of meat, you swallow that piece whole, it's going to take much, much, much longer to digest that piece of food than if you were to chew it up and turn it into smaller pieces. These are all physical changes. Let's take a closer look at the mouth here. Here we've got a x-ray view of the mouth and the jaw. You have the tongue and the teeth, obviously. They're going to be major components in grinding and mashing up food, just basically taking that piece of food, taking that apple and turning it into smaller pieces of apple. We also have here saliva glands that we'll talk about here in just a minute. These saliva glands are used in the chemical digestion process. So chemical digestion equals chemical change. Now that one's pretty easy to remember. They both start with chemical. In this process, the salivary glands are going to secrete saliva that breaks down carbohydrates. And again, I told you earlier, takes those carbohydrates and turns them into sugar. It's a chemical change. It's turning it into something new. So here's another view of the mouth. You have these saliva glands that are in your mouth. They're constantly producing saliva. Gallons of saliva per day are being produced. And in that watery saliva, which is mostly water, are these enzymes. And these enzymes are the little chemicals that are going to speed up reactions. They're going to take the food and they're going to turn it into something new. In the next step of the digestive process, we have the esophagus. Now, the esophagus is the muscular tube that connects the mouth to the stomach. It's that tube that goes down the middle of your chest. Okay? When you swallow a piece of food, this tube is going to squeeze the food down to your stomach. We discussed this earlier, how you can eat a piece of food and swallow a piece of food while standing on your head or being in outer space, because this tube has a muscular lining. If it's muscle, it has the ability to move, and it can swallow the food and push that food, whether you're standing on your head or not, to your stomach. And this process is called peristalsis right here. It's called peristalsis. That is the whole process of the esophagus pushing the food down to the stomach. And here I've got a couple diagrams. Okay, you can see right here the esophagus, again, squeezing the food down to the lower part of this picture, which is the stomach. And then here's an enlarged view of that. Here's the piece of food right here. And again, the muscle lining of the esophagus squeezing the food on down to the stomach. And again, a larger view so you can get a better idea. Okay, this is a piece of food that you just chewed up in your mouth and you swallowed. Okay, and again, the muscles just behind the food are pushing, and they will continue to push in this wave-like action all the way down to the stomach. So the next organ in line in the digestive system is the stomach. Now, we usually refer to the stomach as being our main digestive organ, but actually the stomach is primarily a storage organ. It's going to store food until the later parts of digestion take place. But in the stomach, we also have chemical and physical changes taking place. In the stomach, as it mixes food with gastric juices, we call these gastric juices pepsin, okay, in order to form chyme. Chyme is the sludge that you find in your stomach. Okay, it's the mixture that you find in your stomach that's eventually going to move on through the digestion process. Proteins that you get from meats are primarily broken down or chemically changed in the stomach. You have hydrochloric acid in your stomach that's going to work on those proteins and those foods, chemically breaking down those foods. But at the same time, we also have physical digestion or mechanical digestion. The stomach also has a muscle lining. The stomach also has the ability to move. So the stomach is constantly churning and moving around. If you ever wonder why you have stomach noises or your stomach growls, it's because your stomach is down there moving. It's squishing around that food. It's squeezing and mashing up whatever foods and liquids that might be in there. It moves on its own. You don't have to think about it. It involuntarily moves and mashes up food in your stomach. So both physical, which is mechanical, and chemical digestion take place in the stomach. Again, there's a larger view of the stomach. You can see that up here we have the esophagus, which leads into the stomach, this large pouch. You can see right here where it has layers of muscle, okay, that are constantly moving and contracting in order to digest the food. So far from what we know, let's look at these various types of digestion. If we're chewing a saltine, which is a cracker, if I'm simply chewing a cracker, what type of digestion is that? That would be mechanical digestion or physical digestion. Your teeth are grinding up that cracker. You're simply taking a large piece of cracker and turning it into small cracker. The next one, Saliva is breaking down the saltine and turning it into glucose. Glucose is the scientific name for sugar. So you have saliva turning the cracker into sugar. What type of change is that? That's chemical digestion. Okay. In chemical digestion, you're taking that cracker, that carbohydrate, and you're turning it into something new. You're turning it into sugar. Lastly, we have your tongue breaking down pieces of a hamburger. Pepsin, which is an enzyme in your stomach, breaking the hamburger into amino acids. Okay. So in that instance, okay, we actually have chemical and mechanical digestion. Your tongue is breaking the hamburger into smaller pieces. And then also you have your stomach using pepsin to break down that protein in that hamburger into amino acids, which are other nutrients that are used by the body. Okay, so far we've talked about the mouth. We have chemical and physical digestion taking place in the mouth. Then it moves to the esophagus. Now here's a question. Does chemical or mechanical digestion take place in the esophagus? Actually, we don't have any digestion taking place in the esophagus. The esophagus is simply a place where the food moves from point A to point B. It's a little bit of a tube, a pathway for the food to get down to the stomach. So the main job of the esophagus is to simply just get the food to the stomach, not worry about digestion. So we have the mouth, we have the esophagus, we have the stomach. In the stomach, we also have mechanical and chemical digestion taking place. We have food being mashed up and changed physically and also changed chemically. Next in line, we have this one right here, which is the intestines. The intestines take food and continue to break it down and turn it into substances that can be used by the body. Primarily, fat is being broken down into smaller molecules of fat. Okay. And we have this example being chemical digestion. The intestines are all about, again, continuing that digestive process and taking the food and breaking it into smaller pieces, and also other substances that can be absorbed into the body. Okay. The remaining food is pushed down to throughout the small intestines, okay, which is an example of physical digestion. So as the food continues to move through the small intestines, it is also ground up and mashed up just as the stomach was doing. Here's a larger view of the stomach, okay, or excuse me, the small intestines. I'm sorry. The lighter pink is the small intestines. Okay. Right here, the small intestines can be up to 20 feet long. It is a very, very long organ. It is so long, so it gives the food lots and lots of time to be absorbed, to be digested chemically, and to be digested physically. Okay. If the small intestines was short, the body wouldn't have near as much time to digest the nutrients. But by making the small intestines really, really long, it's like going through a long hallway or going down a long road. It takes a longer period of time. Therefore, there's more opportunity for those nutrients to be absorbed. And if you want to, you can watch this video. I'm not going to watch it at this point, but you're free. Feel free to watch the video. You can actually go to the actual PowerPoint of this and go click on this YouTube link, and it takes you through an interesting video talking about the various types of digestion. So why do we need to eat? Well, we need to get energy that is stored in food. Ultimately, every cell in our body needs energy. The food is the source of that energy, okay, that chemical energy. We're going to talk about chemical energy in more detail a little bit later on, but every cell in our body needs energy. Every cell in our body needs food, which is chemical energy. Okay, this energy is released by breaking down the food in the digestive system, and we're going to take this energy that is locked in the food and give it to our body. So, we need energy, okay, to walk, to jump, to talk, to breathe. We get this energy by taking chemical energy, which is food, and taking it and converting it to mechanical energy, which is movement. Also, to generate body heat, we take chemical energy and we use that chemical energy to generate heat for the body, to maintain homeostasis throughout the body.